people the next morning they were going to make the next bombing run. Analysis would provide information like, is this airfield still serviceable? How many aircraft are left and ready to fly from there? Is that ship ready to sail? What kind of tanks can cross this bridge? The third phase was the most detailed. These were the top specialists. They could tell from what type of truck was in the railroad yards what was about to be shipped. Experts, naval experts, could predict the strength of the Navy a year in advance by analyzing what kind of keel was being laid. They reported up-to-date type and number of planes on all the German airfields and how many were serviceable. They spotted and tracked the Bismarck, located all the Atlantic Coast radar stations. They tracked all the U-boat construction and deployment. And very helpful was they could tell when to rebomb a factory, because obviously they could rebuild the building before it was operational. And they could tell from looking at the trucks if they were bringing in machinery to restock and repair the inside of the factory and get ready to produce material. And then they could tell when they started to bring raw material, they said, okay, now is the time to rebomb it. It'd be the most effective damage. The aircraft people could tell what prototype was being developed of a plane and when it would be ready to be deployed. The top analyst, Constance Babington Smith, identified the ME-163 as a jet airplane, and she predicted when it was about to be deployed by identifying the length of the burn marks in the grass behind it during the engine warm-ups. She was deadly accurate. Sculptors and artists made over 1,400 large terrain models to brief bomber crews and commandos before raids. And then enter Group Captain Francis Catter, who tried to impose military discipline on this maverick group. He tried to make them learn to march and to stand in formation and have parades and keep regular hours. None of it which worked, fortunately, because obviously they had to work irregular hours. They sort of ignored it. Living conditions were rather grim. They had like 15, 16 people in each Quonset hut. Of course, not all of them sleeping at the time because they were working different shifts. And I can't believe this, they had got 2 inches of bath water allowed per week. But then I'm told the Continentals don't bathe every day like you Americans do. We had no photo interpreters. We joined them and learned from them at the beginning of the war. On 3/19/1940, on the first bombing raid the English conducted, they were to bomb a seaplane base at Silt Island. And Prime Minister Chamberlain happily announced it was a complete success. The only problem was the PIs, the photo interpreters, couldn't find any damage. An enraged bomber Harris, you know about him, ordered them to be locked in a room until they found damage. Well, repeated recon and information from the Dutch underground reported they, by mistake, had bombed a neutral Dutch island, not the seaplane base. PIs gained a great deal of credibility from this. Bomber Harris never apologized or admitted he was wrong, which I understand is typical of his personality. The biggest coup was Operation Bodyline. In 1942, the pilot saw an airfield at Peenemünde in northeast Germany, and they saw 3 concrete unearthed circles. Initially, PI couldn't decide what it was. And in 1943, in a bug conversation between 2 captured German generals, one of them mentioned a secret weapon that would win the war. Scoured Europe to find it. And using the 3D pictures, and they spotted an upright tube on one of the hard sides and deduced that it was a 14-meter high rocket. A mission of 500 bombers was sent in August of '43 that destroyed all the Peenemünde launch and production sites, and about half of their scientists, but of course not Werner von Braun. So the factories were moved to Poland and Germany out of range of the Spitfires, but they built new launch sites. PIs were able to identify the V-1s of Peenemünde, how it was launched, its range of 130 miles, and the apparent line of flight, which appeared to be towards London. So they swept an arc that distance from London to France and Belgium, and located 96 launch sites, all of which were targeted and destroyed in Operation Crossbow. That was in December of '43. Then the Germans began to use mobile launchers. If they had not discovered this and done the bombing that I mentioned, and Hitler had been able to launch on the scale that he wanted, Eisenhower said Overlord would have probably been canceled. So it's fairly important. They gave detailed administration on the channel coastal defenses. Every obstruction, gun emplacement, angles, the best beaches to land on, assembly points, and routes off the beaches. All the radar stations that could pick up ships in the channel were identified, and over 100 were destroyed in preparation of D-Day. The beach it was supposed to land on, and to the bombers. But of course, you know, the landing craft were blown off course, and the bombers dropped their bombs too early and failed to destroy the Omaha defenses. But never in history has the invading army had so much information about the enemy's strength and dispositions. PI, of course, continued after World War II during Cold War, but with U-2 aircraft and satellites. And now it's called imagery analysis of information from drone aircraft, flown, for instance, over Afghanistan and controlled in Nevada. Thank you.